Hello there, I'm Liam O'Connell. I'm the Operations Director at the CK Group. You probably know some of our brands, the CK Science, CK Clinical and CK Technical. The reason we're here today is to answer a number of questions related to all the changes coming in with regards to IR35, as we find that quite a lot of our contractors are still unsure as to how this will affect them. So what we've done is we've brought together a number of people who hopefully answer some of your questions on this. I'll let them introduce themselves here.
Hi, I'm Russell Oakley. I work in the CK Clinical division of the CK Group. Within that division, we do have a lot of outside IR35 contractors currently, and we are obviously getting bombarded with quite a lot of questions at present about those statuses and what's going to happen in the next few weeks coming up to the 6th of April. So I'm here to kind of give that alternative perspective really on what the contractors are actually saying and what questions are getting asked on a day-to-day basis.
Thanks, Russell. Hi, I'm Chris Humphreys from BHP Chartered Accountants. I'm a tax partner with over 25 years experience advising both personal and corporate tax, and I'm really here to keep these two on the straight and narrow.
Russ, you've got a number of questions there from contractors. Should we start going through them?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So I guess it's probably aimed at you, Chris. What's the background to all the changes? Why is it kind of come into force?
That's a good question, Russ. I mean, actually, in order to understand the background, you have to go back 19 years because IR35, or the tax legislation around it, was actually introduced in the year 2000. And the idea was that the government, the HMRC, were starting to look at how people were taxed when they were engaged through an intermediary and really looking to tax them as if they were an employee.
Yeah.
So time moved on, the rules haven't changed a huge amount, there's been quite a lot of tax law, but then in about April 2016, the government started to get really nervous about how much income was generated from that part of the tax rules. And in particular, they focused their changes on the public sector. So in April 2017, the off-payroll working rules were changed in relation to the public sector, and the government leads us to believe that actually it raised £500 million in additional revenue each year from it. So following on from that success, they then thought, well, actually, shall we now apply it to the private sector? And that's where we are today.
Yeah.
It was due to, an awful lot of it was because there was a lot of stuff in relation to the BBC and the public sector, and that wasn't people being paid huge amounts of money without paying a lot of tax. Yeah,
okay. I mean, it's a good way of looking at it. I mean, when we talk about it as IR35, actually the rules haven't changed with in relation to IR35 since the year 2000. But it's interesting to talk briefly about some of the tax cases that are around. Largely high-profile people working for either Look North or the BBC or ITV. Talking in particular about Lorraine Kelly. That was one of the big cases that were around. Krista Ackroyd was another one. And that really defined the way in which the government and the revenue would consider somebody's status when looking at IR35. The changes we're talking about today are actually the administration of who determines when IR35 applies and whether you are inside or outside IR35. That's the change. The rules are as they were, and tax case law has been quite active around it.
Yeah, because the legislation actually hasn't changed at all.
The legislation hasn't changed.
I think that kind of proves the point there that people are getting confused with that matter.
Absolutely.
And that's clearly what I'm seeing with some of the contractors out there, is they're not quite sure why it suddenly changed. Well, it's actually the decision's being made by a different party within the chain of process.
Within the relationship, So we're looking predominantly at personal service companies, where contractors have their own personal service company that they use to engage with the end user. And generally that means that the test as to whether they're caught by IR35 has been determined by them themselves. The change in the rules from the 6th of April, as it applies to the private sector, is that it will now be the end user that will determine that status and will say actually whether you are inside or outside IR35. The rules themselves, keep going on about it, have not changed.
Okay, we've answered some of the other questions on there, but what tests should clients and contractors undertake to determine their IR35 status? I guess this is a question for both of you, really.
A little bit.
There are a lot of tests out there at the moment. The government have got the CES test, which they've tweaked quite a lot over the last number of months. But it is the one that HMRC are recommending to everybody to use, as they will follow the recommendations once you've undertaken the CES test. Now, this is for the hiring company, the end users, to do it. And if a contractor is interested to see whether they're inside or outside IR35, they can actually do the test themselves. And it will give them the answer. And it's fairly rigorous as to how they're going to implement that. There are we're seeing quite a lot of our clients are using different tests.
Yeah, there's different people out there. None of them are HMRC approved.
Yes,
so actually
even though they all say they are.
Agreed, yeah.
I think a lot of them are actually indemnifications, aren't they? They're companies that provide the indemnity against.
There's an element to that. I mean, there are two parts to the status test. The one is that the rules now say that from the 6th of April, you must take reasonable care when determining somebody's status. Right. And reasonable care in the revenue land is using some of these tools to consider whether somebody is inside or outside IR35. As long as you've used the tool, whether it's CEST or a third-party provider, you will be deemed to have taken reasonable care. The benefit of CEST or any other tool is that then you are determining the status of the consultant, the contractor. And you must issue them with a status determination, which is actually a formal determination as to what you, as the end user, think their status is, whether you are inside or outside IR35. And having issued that determination, the end user should then treat that contractor on the basis of that determination. So if the determination says that you are inside IR35, then all of a sudden you're into pay-as-you-earn, national insurance, employers' national insurance, which is what the government are after. If you're outside IR35, then your relationship is as it was.
Okay. What I'm seeing from a lot of contractors is we're at this stage now where this determination is being done. What can they do? Can they challenge it?
Well, I mean, you can challenge it. There is a framework that says that you've got 45 days to challenge it and then for the end user to respond. So there is a framework then that you can say, actually, well, I don't agree with what you said. If ultimately the status determination is changed because of that, then that's fine. You've had the right outcome. If you still can't agree, then actually the recent consultation says that the only way you can challenge it is through your self-assessment return.
Yes, it is. Yes.
Which is a strange sort of way of doing it because usually the self-assessment return follows a year and a half afterwards. You know, so it's a strange one.
Yes. I mean, the other thing we're seeing is an awful lot of clients, particularly the large clients, are doing a blanket determination and saying that every contract role is inside IR35. And if you don't want to work on that basis, you don't work for the companies. And this is followed on. The banks started doing that, and now the major pharma a lot of the major pharma companies are doing that. And obviously, that's a decision then for the contractor as to whether they want to stay working with that company.
I think that's right. You've got to consider the commercial risk in this.
Yeah.
Having changed the nature or the responsibility for doing the status determination, who is at risk of having it challenged by the revenue? So it's going to be the financial institution or the pharma company. And so because of that, they've taken the stance that actually we're going to reclassify everybody. And bring them onto the books and treat them as if they were employees.
Yes, that's what's happening. So we're finding that as a recruitment organisation, the big pharma are saying, this is what we've got. You have to advertise every position is inside IR35 from now. And so that means that they're saying any people who are working outside IR35 come 6th of the April have to switch to contracts to either be on a PAYE basis or they have to
and the impact of that is a mathematical one because if you're paid the same rate as you were as an outside IR35 contractor, then you're about 10 to 11-12% worse off as a result of it.
In certain cases,
more. Possibly, you have to do the maths on it, I think,
that's a difficult situation for people to adjust to.
And I suppose that's part of the role of this presentation today, because what we've found is that where people have been wholly reclassified, they've tried to raise the point with the contractors and say, actually, can we talk about IR35 and our relationship? And actually the engagers are saying, well, we don't really know about it, we don't really want to get involved in it, it's our commercial risk, let's reclassify everybody.
So with the people who are where it's been a blanket change to being inside IR35. If as a contractor you want to challenge the role, you have to wait till you're doing
you're determined. It's interesting to talk a bit more about CEST. I mean, it's the check employment status tool. It was written by the revenue as a means for you to go in and check your status, either yourself personally or the people that you contract with. You can't break it. It's a software package. You can play around with it, give different answers. It will give you a view as to whether you are inside or outside IR35. Unfortunately, the software isn't as dynamic as it should be.
Yeah.
And I think at one point, actually, it didn't even deal with whether you were inside or outside the public or private sector.
No, it didn't.
Yeah.
And then various occasions it has changed overnight.
Yeah.
The questions. I can guarantee that it won't break it. I have tried.
Yeah,
I've not been able to.
Liam is, yeah, but
I'm good at breaking these.
Call, I think.
Absolutely.
Yeah, because Russell's right. The end using third-party providers isn't any stronger than using CEST, but you might well get the indemnification.
Yeah. I think what we're seeing is there's a lot of companies out there that are maybe in partnership with in-house MSPs and things like that are agreeing to indemnify both the client and the contractor if they have an assessment tool that matches up kind of thing, or a result from that assessment tool that matches up. And we've had some pushback, as you can probably imagine. Some people have just gone with it, but it's a very, I guess, trying time for those people. It's a new concept.
But the tests haven't changed.
No.
So actually, they should all have been aware of those tests when considering their own status anyway.
Yeah.
There's an interesting dynamic about the status determination in that you don't just have to give it to the contractor. You have to give it to everybody in the chain.
Yes.
So that you're all aware of your responsibilities.
Right.
So actually given it to an umbrella company or an agency, it's also their responsibility to then pass that down the chain as well.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And keep passing it down so that the end user knows what their status is, whether they're inside or outside IR35. If that's done correctly, then the liability, if it's challenged and reasonable care has been taken, will flow all the way to the contractor.
Yeah.
If, however, there is a flaw in the way that it's been done or somebody hasn't taken reasonable care, then the liability can stick with somebody else in the chain.
Yeah. So from a recruitment point of view, once we get the information through from the hiring company or the end user, we'll be passing that information straight down to the next person.
Yeah, great. And that's good practice. Yeah, absolutely right.
Yeah. Okay, one of the questions that I've been hearing quite a lot of is how is a person reclassified as a contractor? What makes their particular contract something that's suddenly now been deemed inside IR35?
Well, I think to answer that, you've got to look at the case law that's been established over the last 19 years and back to some of the high-profile cases I've talked about. It goes to whether the contract is one of a contract of service or a contract for service. Yeah. So if you're an employee and the nature of your relationship is such that you work like an employee, it means that you can't control how you work. You're told where to work and how to work, what time to turn up, how many hours, who to report to. You fit into the appraisal system, all those sort of things. People require you to turn up and do your job. And there's something called, which is quite an important test, called mutuality of obligation. Yeah. Which is an obligation on the...
confuses a lot of people.
And it's quite a strong test. The fact that there's a contract in place between two parties, doesn't mean there's mutuality of obligation. It's stronger. It's if I turn up, I can request that you give me work, and also there's an obligation the other way for you to give me work. So that's where the mutuality goes. In terms of a self-employed contract, an outside IR35 contract, the mutuality of obligation can be there because there's a contract, but actually there's no responsibility on the end user to give you work all the time. No. They might engage you for one project, and there's no obligation on you to take it if it's given. No. So there's a real risk reward on who's doing the work. And that ultimately is the sort of real test of self-employed. Is there a financial risk in what you're doing? If you don't turn up, you don't get paid. If you're sick, which is quite topical at the moment, you don't get paid. There's no holiday pay, anything else around that. And all of those tests have come through the case law that we talked about. But even then, what the case law shows is it's on the terms of the specific case and the relationship in the round. So the Lorraine Kelly case was actually that she was the new brand, the new she had control over how her programme worked and who was interviewed on it and what the content was. But they were actually paying her for the brand of Lorraine on that programme. That's what they wanted. Right. Whereas Krista Ackroyd was in a similar vein. She was engaged to try and increase the ratings for Look North, I think it was, at the time. Yeah. And but she was told who to have on and who to interview.
It's more like
So there was bringing in then as well. You had the supervision, direction, and control played a major part.
Absolutely,
And that seems to be one that we found that when the companies are making the determination, it seems to be one of the key areas. The key area looking at.
And then I suppose another key area which people try and use to knock them outside of the IR35 rules is the substitution clause.
Yes.
I mean, that's a difficult one, because if you've got a contract with an end user and it says that if I'm not available, then I can send a substitute. You've got to agree who that substitute is, but I can send one. Then that should get you outside of the IR35 rules.
Yeah.
But it's got to have reality.
Yeah.
And have the ability to actually have a substitute that's available and acceptable.
And then the companies if the company then has to interview the substitute and go through the whole process again, kind of.
The
nature of the industry as well is that pharma, biotech, and industries are so highly regulated. The amount of compliance and screening.
And that is helpful.
Yeah.
Obviously you've been engaged on those terms. You've been screened. You've got the technical expertise and sign off. But let's say, for example, you can't attend to do your project.
Yeah.
If it's down to you to find that substitute, then that's quite a strong sort of risk-reward relationship.
Yeah.
If, however, the pharma company already knows another 10 that they could find as a replacement for you, then that sort of weakens it a little bit.
I see.
Yeah.
I mean, one of the things that we're starting to see a little bit of is a movement towards more statement of work type contracts.
Correct, absolutely,
within the pharma industry.
Yeah.
Which obviously will do away with whether somebody's inside or outside IR35, because it's for that specific
project, and that's the risk. You're engaged purely to do that project. It's under your control how and when you do it.
Yes.
Success will be whether you do the project or not, and actually you're reporting in a different way.
I mean, it is interesting, because certain areas of the pharma industry, it does fit naturally into that. And we as a recruiter are starting to see more companies asking us, have you got a statement of work contract, so we can give you the work. I
mean, bizarrely, it contrasts very directly with my industry, where we have people who have to fill in timesheets and account for their every quarter of an hour of time, and they've got to be there from 9 to 5:30. So those sort of tests are much more directly controlled. So I think the statement of work actually will be a good outcome.
Yes.
Yeah. So those are the sort of tests you apply. One of the questions that I'm asked quite often is, if I am reclassified, does that mean that the revenue will come and look at every other year when I was outside IR35?
Yeah, good question. That is one thing that
I mean, sometimes people are quite cynical about HMRC, but there was a statement from the Treasury that said that they wouldn't look at earlier years of somebody that had been reclassified if there was no evidence of fraudulent activity or illegal activity. Yeah.
So they had the review recently in February, and I was over with HMRC on that review, which was quite interesting. So there were a few changes that have come out of that, which they're not huge, but to make it slightly easier.
It's meant to be easier to implement and easier to control, and probably a bit of a lighter touch in terms of people who are reclassified or not.
Yes, I mean, one of the things they said is that if people make a genuine mistake over the next year, so long as it's genuine and it's not fraudulent, people won't be punished for it, whether a hiring company or the individual themselves.
Yeah, and that is a sensible approach, I think.
Absolutely, it's going to give time to bed it in.
Yeah.
One of the other interesting things they've come out with is if you are hiring somebody and your legal entity is based abroad and you do not have entities within the UK, the rules don't apply.
No, agreed.
So if you're working through your PSC here in the UK for somebody abroad, it doesn't apply to you.
But you would need to consider what the rules were in the offshore jurisdiction.
Absolutely.
Agreed. Yeah.
Absolutely. But it's interesting. And they've also said that it's only going to kick in for work that's undertaken after the 6th of April. Not work that's been undertaken before the 6th of April. So you might send in your invoices that are for all of March, and you might send them in at the end of April. That's fine.
That's fine.
But it's for work that you actually undertake after the 6th of April.
We
made representation to HMRC about that ourselves and a number of other recruitment companies, because it seems slightly unfair. For the contractors.
We made quite a few representations when the rules were originally introduced back in July. There was a consultation process, lasted quite a long time. And there was quite a lot of momentum within the recruitment industry and also in the contractor industry, which actually, can we defer this? It seems quite a draconian bit of legislation. And so one of the things we were looking for in the budget was whether that deferral would take place. And actually all that happened was they confirmed it was going to happen.
They said it was definitely going to happen because we should make quite a bit of money out of it. However, it is what it is.
Yeah, doesn't apply to small and medium-sized enterprises, so there is a size test.
That was going to be my next question, actually.
Yeah.
Are there any exemptions, I guess?
Yeah, so it's largely linked to the audit threshold.
Yes.
Yeah, so if you look at the audit thresholds...
10.2 million, isn't
correct,
it?
yeah.
Turnover, 50
Yeah.
employees, and 5.1 million on the balance sheet. So
correct.
Two of those.
Two of those. Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
But then you've got the difficulty is like with a company. So let's say you're a small company, and I'll say to you, are you inside? Is the role going to be inside, outside? How do you make the determination then of what size company you are?
Agreed.
What accounts do you base?
Yeah, which ones? Yeah.
Also, you've got. I mean, we've had it recently. Actually, if you're a smaller entity in the UK, does it? Are we classing the whole global network of this company, or is it just the UK part of it, where we're looking at the 10 million and
on the limits?
Yeah, on the limits.
Yeah. So the limits for audit purposes would apply to the standalone company.
Right. Okay.
So I think that's the way it would apply.
The
So tend to
global
Yeah.
kind of
Yeah.
thing. Right, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Because we do have some smaller biotechs, as you know. There are some smaller biotechs within various business parts around the UK, and they're quite small entities.
Yeah.
And I'm sure their balance sheets kind of tick the box, but their headquarters are based in San Francisco, and they employ about 50 staff over there. So it's okay.
So you have to, as a contractor or as a recruitment company, you have to base on trust on what you are told.
Absolutely.
by this organisation.
Yeah, knowledge, and then that goes to the reasonable care period.
Yeah.
I know we've created a document to get clients to kind of agree to those points.
And it's based on the last year's fully audited accounts.
Yeah, the last year's, yeah. So not current information up to date. So not information at 6th of April. It's the last set of accounts.
So companies could either go into a situation where they will have to do the test, or it may be the opposite way.
Yeah, agreed. It could come in and out. Yeah, you've got to keep it under review all the time.
Yeah.
Interesting dynamic then. You're within the personal service company. You've been engaged in that way for a number of years, traded quite successfully, but then you're reclassified. And what do you do with your personal service company? So you can keep it.
Yeah.
And just keep it running and running. You've got all the admin costs and sort of legal costs of doing that, or it is possible that you could just liquidate it.
Right.
So quite a lot of people have done that because actually,
right, okay,
yeah,
you've seen a fair
yeah.
bit of
So
that,
so the principle of the personal service company was that you were paying corporation tax on your profits, your results, and then withdrawing your value out by way of a dividend. But quite a lot of those entities said, well, actually, I'll only take out enough to live on, and then I'll warehouse the rest into my distributable reserves. And so, having been reclassified, you could actually then wind that company up and distribute the reserves. And in doing that, you'd effectively be able to realise them as a capital gains tax income, capital gains tax charge.
Right, which obviously after the budget was probably not as
good as it used to
was.
Be. Well, I think the government view is it would cover most people.
Yeah.
So you can make
£1 million. Yes,
yeah, you can make £1 million worth of gain, and quite a lot of these personal service companies are owned by husbands and wives as well. Yeah, they've been structured correctly.
Yeah.
Okay. I've kind of come across some of these questions dealing with contractors recently, but for any advice to contractors, what should they be doing now? What's the best kind of possible thing that they could be doing at present, other than waiting for their...
No, I think you can be more active than that. Yeah. I think you need to start playing around with CEST yourself to see what the outcome of that would be based on you answering the questions. Okay. As I say, you can't break it. Yep. You can very quickly get to an answer that says that you are outside IR35. Yeah. Similarly, you can get to one that says you're inside. Yeah. If you are inside, then I would suggest you then start to have a dialogue with the end user, either in relation to whether you are likely to be reclassified or not, and if you are likely to be reclassified, what's your rate going to be? Yeah. Because it's your one chance to negotiate what your rate's going to be.
And we are seeing that with some clients, that they realise that these roles are not going to be reclassified in any other way other than being inside IR35. Yeah. And therefore negotiations are now starting with individuals on getting an uplift on their initial rate.
Yeah, agreed.
Maybe to cover to national insurance.
To cover around 13.8% plus maybe the apprenticeship levy on top. Yeah,
because obviously the end user is looking to pass that on.
Of course,
and it's that negotiation about whether you split it or or whether the end user takes it all.
Yeah. So I mean, obviously some end users are saying, well, no, I'm not paying any more because this is the same service. Whereas others are taking it on board and saying, well, actually, we can see how their take-home is going to be reduced quite dramatically. Yeah. Let's see if we can help on that. And they'll split the difference nearly.
Yeah. I know the outcome of this could be quite draconian in some particular instances, but quite clearly the revenue view is that there is something wrong with how people are classifying themselves.
Yeah.
They believe that 1 in 10 do it incorrectly. And so they're trying to put a tension in there that actually says, well, can we change the emphasis and the responsibility to see if that changes how people are classified? And then the impact, as I say, could be additional revenue of about £3 billion a year, which is a lot of money. So that's why I always knew it was going to turn up.
Yeah, yeah.
Just a matter of
I suppose one of the things to think about for people who are going inside IR35 is that they are going to get additional benefits.
Oh, agreed. Yeah.
You know, they get the paid holidays, pension contributions,
Sick leave.
It's particularly at the moment, very useful. So, and then they have access to, whether they're working through agencies, other agencies offer agencies offer a lot of other benefits as well, which will vary.
Well, exactly. I mean, as an agency, we are looking at some of our clients and trying to renegotiate bill rates with them to try and incorporate additional benefits like private medical, dental, things like that. I mean, obviously, at this stage, you know, we're kind of hemmed in with the bill rates that we have, but there are potentials
there
to
will
do
be
that.
almost like a break clause or a change.
And that will, in a sense, that is a slight positive that's come out of it, I guess, from a contractor's perspective.
And going back to the mutuality obligation, you'll actually be in a position where a contract says you've got to give me work.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And you're not at risk anymore.
The paid holidays are a huge difference for people, because obviously if you're outside IR35, you were not paid when you weren't there.
Oh, great,
whereas now you'll actually be paid for 52 weeks of the year.
Correct.
So it should balance out a little bit in terms of the rate.
That's what the hope would be,
I suppose there's also the AWR kind of regulations that kind of come in as well to these contractors, which means they're now eligible to get some of the same rights as permanent staff on site as well. So things like parking spaces, or, you know, access to creches and things like that. There are clients out there that don't see limited company or personal service company within that threshold, so therefore they have to park off site and various other things. So there's additional things as well that I guess you know, kind of put a bit of extra icing on top of the cake in a sense.
So I think in a roundabout way we're saying it might be no bad thing, but you just need to work through it.
It'll take a little bit of getting used to.
I think so.
Because it'll be a complete different way of earning your remuneration.
I think that's right.
And you will take a bit of a hit, but hopefully over a period of time it'll balance out.
And that hit hopefully will be compensated by other rights that you've never had before, which will give you some sort of financial security, which might be no bad thing.
I think it's just a learning curve up for clients, for agencies, for contractors alike. There's a large contingent workforce within the UK. Pharma companies, for one, will definitely still need that level of service, and things will change. Either pay rates will go up, additional benefits, something will happen to help. Kind of
they've got to make it work.
Exactly. And you know, all the contract staff that are currently working can't be converted to permanent.
No.
So
the jobs aren't going to disappear overnight.
The jobs aren't going to disappear overnight.
But it's just making sure you meet those status tests.
Yes.
And that's the hard graft you could do now,
Absolutely,
I think.
Yeah,
because this is only 3 weeks away now.
Only 3 weeks away, but it's coming.
Yeah.
Okay, one of the key questions that I kind of see from contractors, but equally from somebody that works for a recruitment agency, is what are umbrella companies doing about all this? And I think from my personal opinion, there's been a little confusion with the contractors as to, can they offer something different to what we can offer as an agency with a payroll department? Can they offer anything different? Is it? I mean, am I wrong here? I assume they can only offer what we can offer.
I think, I mean, I think they're another forum for allowing people to deal with the responsibilities of being inside IR35. Whether they are as well geared up to do it as you are, I'm not sure. Umbrella companies, unfortunately, have become quite tainted in relation that they've been structures to try and avoid actually paying the right amount of income tax. I've seen all sort of press coverage about, come and join our umbrella company, you only pay 2% tax, and I'm just wondering, well, how does that work? It's not real world. So I actually think credibility within agencies is much stronger.
And I think that's where the confusion is coming from, because the contractors, you can't blame them. They're seeing all these kind of ways of working. And fair enough, if you're an agency that doesn't have a payroll department, you need to partner with an umbrella company to be able to provide that service. But I guess for me, it's the breakdown of the rate and what they're going to be taking home. And we're getting some umbrella companies stating that people can take home 80 to 90% of their gross.
Yeah, it's
income.
not right, and it's right on the aggressive scale of tax planning.
So,
I mean,
I think the nature of what you're doing is different in that in the agency world, you're looking to actually help the contractor, make sure he's engaged in the right way, make sure he meets his filing responsibilities. I just get the feeling that the umbrella company structure is almost about trying to reduce the overall tax charge in quite an aggressive fashion.
I mean, we've certainly seen some people have been coming up to us with say, "Oh, this umbrella has given us a great deal," and it has been proven with case law, and people have been fined a load of back taxes. If it's too good to be, if it looks too good to be true, it's not true. And HMRC, one of the things they have said is they won't actually go after the umbrella companies; they'll go after the individual.
Great.
Because it's easier to get the individual. So the umbrella company, if they are offering a scheme that, whether it's loan-based scheme or whether it's loads of expenses, chances are that doesn't follow the actual remit.
No, I agree. I think the days of those sort of structures they're sorry, Liam.
I'm saying that there are a lot of good umbrella companies that are offering really good services, but they are the ones that are controlled by the FSCA.
They're regulated,
and they're highly regulated. And you know, we work very closely with a number of those. But it is one thing I would say to any contractor: be very careful of the umbrella company you're looking at, and make sure you've done your homework on them. I know you've got a list of questions and
I mean
we send out to people
that you should ask of an umbrella company.
We've got a preferred list of around 5 umbrella companies that we use that we know do things you know as we do, I guess, in a pay-as-you-earn basis.
You've done your due diligence.
Absolutely, and I think people have just got to be aware of that. And to be honest, we've had some clients as well that have actually, going back to the question about the blanket determination, that have said, in addition to the blanket determination, we're not going to use anyone other than an agency to work on a pay-as-you-earn basis, because we don't want to risk a PSC, and we don't want to risk using an umbrella company that's not doing it correctly. So that's interesting that some clients out there are quite risk averse.
I think that's a good point. That those aggressive structures have gone largely because there was the independent review of the loan charge that just came out from Parliament in December, which sort of effectively confirmed that where you have taken a loan out of an umbrella company, then you'll be treated as if it was remuneration by any other way and pay income tax on it.
Was it saying something like 50,000 people are going to have to pay quite a lot of tax back on that one? Quite a lot. So.
I mean, some of the other questions that contractors have mentioned are if I am determined to be inside IR35, is there anything I can do about my contract to change it, or is there anything I can do about my way of working?
Well, obviously we talked about statement of work. Actually, project-based work is quite a good way of doing it. But then working through the status tests and the nature of your relationship, and looking at who's in control, you know, what rights and responsibilities have you got, where's the financial reward. If you really are desperate to be outside IR35, then you need to make sure that you meet some of those status tests.
But ultimately, it's down to the end user.
Well, that goes to the whole point of the change, on the 6th of April.
It's not, if you work outside IR35 but you want to stay in the same role, it's not down to you. You can discuss with your hiring company to see whether you actually can change the way your job works or the role is. But if they determine,
some of the concern was that the hiring managers probably weren't as aware of IR35 as we would have hoped.
We've been in a number of events and they didn't know anything about it.
Well, I've got a client at the moment, and they are reassessing quite a few roles, because I think they've initially given that responsibility to the hiring manager, who, you know, may have only heard about it in January.
Great.
And therefore, you know, aren't, I guess, well read up on the whole process, really. So
they're just looking for a hire.
And there's some disagreement between the contractors and the determination. So therefore, the company is like blanket covered that role and said, okay, well, let's reassess, because this role here is very similar to that role, and this one's not outside IR35. So how can we, best look at that, really? So it's interesting. I think what's worrying for me is it's getting very close to the 6th of April, and we're still at this initial negotiation stage with certain clients, but we seem to be getting there somewhat, and I think contractors are suddenly kind of realising that we don't have an option.
I think many of them were expecting the rules to be deferred.
I think we were towards the end of last year. I think come the start of this year and the election of the new government
and the momentum on it.
we kind of knew it was going to come into
great.
force. If it had been a hung parliament, I think it might have been a slightly different situation. But
it could have been, but
it's too far the other way, I think.
It is. So 6th of April, the law, or it doesn't change. It changes slightly as to where the determination is coming from.
Correct. Yes.
One other question that I've actually answered to some contractors is, can I focus my attention on finding a job within a company that fits the three points, the smaller company, the lower turnover, that kind of thing?
Yeah.
And my answer is yes, of course you can do that.
Yep.
But there are only a certain amount of companies out there that are of that size. And similarly to the public sector, I guess, when that happened is that everybody went to the private sector to try and get jobs and stay within their public services company. We're going to be in that situation again, really. We're going to have all these people that are trying to focus in on these smaller companies.
And obviously the small companies do not hire as many people at all.
No. And a lot of the time, the smaller companies hire permanent staff. It's rare. As a contract recruiter, it's rare that companies of that size tend to take on large number of contractors. So if you're happy in your job at the moment and you like the job that you're doing, I would seriously consider, looking around, because it's not looking around, because this is going to be happening across the board to everybody.
And I think you need to think wider than the tax savings.
Yeah, absolutely.
Commercially, financial stability,
happiness in your job.
That's one of the reasons why, as well, as we advise all our contractors to speak to people such as yourself, to speak to their financial advisors, so as they can get a good understanding of it and see if they can actually speak to the hiring company to change the way they work, find out what's best. I think it is very important, because we can't advise anybody, whereas you are, obviously that's your job, that's what you're paid to do. And obviously people, similar companies to yourselves, so he's a good guy if anybody wants to speak to him about it.
Commission's on its way.
Okay. So just as an aside note, I guess, to everyone that's out there wondering what to do next, is that the CK Group as a whole, we offer a pay-as-you-earn payroll department. So we have done that since 1991, when we were first established as a company. So over the years, it's been predominantly the area that I've recruited in and managed contractors within. So if you are looking for a company to help your contract role go forward and payroll you, then that's definitely something that we can offer. Or if you just want some advice and want to have a bit more of a chat about things, then give me a call. My details are on the screen below, and I'll be happy to talk to you about that.
Okay, thanks, Russ. Okay, well, that's basically gone through all our questions. I hope you found it useful. As Russ said, if you want to get in touch with ourselves for any further information, we're more than happy to help, whether you're a contractor who works for us or you're working through your own personal services company and you want to know more information. You'll have all our details for Russ, Chris and myself, and do not hesitate to give us a call if we can help you at all. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, thank you.